How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to UAP Tuesdays on The Big Thing. I'm so glad that you're joining me here each and every week, each and every Tuesday. Thank you for everybody who has come back and continues to come back. I'm excited for this episode, man. Riley's going to be back next week, but I had a chance to speak to filmmaker Darcy Weir and retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet. And this is I didn't know a lot about the USO stuff, man. And I keep hearing stuff about these things that go into the water and and there's so much more to it. It just opens up the entire phenomena in general, that it's not just stuff that at one point, Riley and I talk about all the time. It was when you don't know enough about it, you just think, oh, it's from light years away in another planet, if that's what these things are. Or it could be from another government, maybe. Or it could be from other dimensions, who knows? Or it can be from under the water, maybe. There's all these things, there's all these potentials. When you hear these ex-military talk about it, and there's a lot that Tim Gallaudet talks about in this interview, and Darcy Weir talks about how he approached this subject and how he got in touch with Tim and Tim's theories on it. And I know yesterday they had the report from the Soul Foundation of what Tim just released. He talks a little bit about that also. So it's a really, really interesting conversation, and I'm glad that you're here to see it. For those that are catching up every day, thank you to everybody who's gone on over to the other channel, the Down to Earth with Kristian Harloff. It's our daily UAP news channel. We're already approaching around, I think it's 15,000 subscribers right now, and we are getting a lot of good traction over there, man. A lot of people are really enjoying what's going on over there, so please join. This show is obviously available here, but it's available on podcast form on the Down to Earth audio feeds, which you will also get the news bits if you subscribe to Spotify or Apple, any of that. But the main thing here is to subscribe to this channel. Subscribe and hit that button. If you're brand new and you saw this and it's popped up into your algorithm, and you're like, well, what is this? Subscribe to this channel. We want new people to come in here and ask questions, as I've mentioned many times over, and I tell them the same thing too. I am not one of these experts inside of the UFO community, UAP community. I'm not. I'm just a guy that said one day, what the hell's going on? I'm curious. What is that? And my friend and I, Mark Riley, we started doing this thing, and we're just trying to, like everybody else, just kind of ask questions. And we love to have more people asking questions just so we find out what the hell's going on. And there's so much news. So without any further ado, let me take you to this interview with both Darcy Weir and Tim Gallaudet. Make sure you put your comments in there. Thanks for joining us, and see you on the other side. All right. So, as I mentioned, I had an opportunity to take a look at this new documentary by filmmaker Darcy Weir. It's called Fast Movers and USOs, Exploring the Depths of the Unknown. So it is a documentary journey into transmedium UFOs and USOs. And when I tell you that my mind was blown, it's an understatement. As you and my guests might not even know, when it comes to you guys who've been watching my show, you know that I am not the I guess pun intended here, deep divers when it comes to the UFO USO topic. I'm new to this thing, man. I believe that I am the type of person that our guests are trying to reach. I was watching a freaking show on streaming, and I found a documentary that I've talked about, which is, at the time, it was called UFOs, Exploring the Unknown. I watched all 6 parts, and I was like, at the time, I'm like, what is Ancient Aliens? What am I watching here? I was like, no, it's not that. It's very similar to my guest. One of my guests that I have today is military with experience, saying, no, look at this stuff that's going on that they're not telling you about. Pay attention. Ask questions. As I tell you guys every week, ask questions. And that is what is being done right now. When I am watching this documentary, I knew a lot about the UFOs and UAPs. There's stuff flying around in the oceans too. And my guests are going to talk about this. And I am very, very, I'm thrilled to bring in both filmmaker Darcy Weir and retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who, if you know, you've seen him from the Soul Foundation. And I'm so excited to have them both on. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here today. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, Kristian.
Yeah. So, Darcy, let me start with you, man. So you've been following the topic for a bit. Uh, Let me start with that. When exactly did you start getting into? I told you my story kind of briefly of how I've kind of come about it. How about yourself? How did you decide to start? Because you made quite a few films now about the subject.
Yeah, I actually approached this from originally a bit of a sensational angle. My original documentary was about a guy that said he worked on building deep underground military bases. And not everything he said was true, but I found it fascinating the ideas that he presented back in the day when he was alive at these grassroots conferences. And, he started actually speaking at a Bigfoot conference, and he became pretty sensational, pretty popular, and was speaking at all these UFO conferences, MUFON, that type of thing. And he eventually passed away, but his death was a little bit peculiar. Um, and I followed the story of UFOs since I was probably about 1920 in university, so almost 20 years now. And I studied Life in the Universe, which is a book that they give out to you in Astrobiology 101. This was penned by Seth Shostak, and it writes about the fundamental reasons that we can't be alone in our universe. Like our galaxy alone, if you go by the Drake equation, there's got to be at least millions of civilizations like us in our own galaxy, in this star system, this ocean of stars that we are gravitating around. And I've just followed this idea and this mystery that maybe, just maybe, we've been visited by an intelligence that's non-human, and that information has been kept from the public for many, many years now. And when I was working on this documentary about USOs and just the phenomenon appearing in oceans. And I actually saw Tim Gallaudet speak on the Good Trouble show by Matt Ford,
Yeah.
who's a very well-educated mainstream guy. He used to produce and work with Bill Maher.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah, he's doing great stuff over there.
And so I reached out to actually Matt, and I said, I don't know if you'd be interested in sharing me, just the email of Tim. I'd love to introduce myself to him. I'm working on this project, and I think his voice would be very important in it because I think he's intelligent and credible, and he has a lot to offer if there's something truly going on in our oceans. And he was like, sure, I'll give you the email, but no promises. This guy's pretty busy. So I wrote to Tim, and sure enough, he was happy to meet with me, and flew out to Washington, D.C., and the rest is history.
It's great history. And Tim, I got to tell you, first of all, and as Darcy is saying that, I feel the same, and I'm honored that you joined us here today on the show. And I have been aware of you, and as you mentioned off air, I covered the Saul Foundation, and I covered your presentation, and I'd actually like to start with that, if that's okay.
Sure.
When it comes to the Saul Foundation and a lot of that stuff that came out, and I'm glad that I get a chance to talk to you, because I said if I talked to anybody who gave one of those presentations, it would be the first thing I asked. The presentation was, you guys shot it in November. It was before the Schumer Act was kind of was watered down, if you will.
Right.
And there was so much emphasis on how important that the Schumer Act would be. How much of a setback, in your estimation, do you think that was, that it was watered down? And were you guys expecting that to happen at all?
Well, it's a big setback for disclosure and for the public's understanding of what UAP actually are, because our government knows what they are. They really don't know what they are, but they have more information than the public. That's for sure. And we were really hoping the Schumer amendment, that would, the UAP Disclosure Act of it, would get signed into law, and that's just not the case. So it's a setback. I mean, I think it's going to take time
The fact that it was written with all the terms like technology of unknown origin, non-human intelligence, UAP, is in itself a pretty monumental breakthrough. So we have to at least appreciate that. But yeah, a bit disappointed. We all hoped there was a collective energy in at that conference for it to pass and for us to move forward and increase our understanding of UAP. But yeah, we're just going to have to take a longer view here and keep pressing on.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem. I mean, as I told you guys as I was introing this, that as you guys are on the front lines, I'm watching here, essentially unplugged from the matrix, if you will. Trying to like just there's so much coming in, and that's why when I see this about the USO stuff, and like I'm like, guys, I'm just trying to catch up with the UAP stuff first. And now there's these like just a fascinating report. So Tim, if you when you first and you talk about this in the docs, when you first discovered that this was going on, like were you a skeptic of this before your first kind of awareness of it?
No, I was pretty open to it. Of course, as a kid, there's shows and programs like Leonard Nimoy's In Search of that would treat UFOs, and that actually interested me. I never pursued it with any kind of seriousness until I was the superintendent of the U.S. Naval Observatory, and as we were talking off air, I got to appreciate how large the universe was,
Yeah.
and all the astrophysicists who work for me. I just learned a great deal about 100 billion stars in our galaxy and over 100 billion galaxies in our observable universe. So I was pretty certain it was arrogant for us as a species to think we were all there was in terms of intelligent life. And then, of course, you might have seen it's been on a lot of different shows that I saw the Go Fast video before it was released.
Yeah.
I received it on the Navy secret network, and that just convinced me that we weren't alone.
Yeah, and Darcy, so like because you guys cover that in the beginning of the doc as well, and when you're hearing these stories about the Go Fast video, and then when you look at it, because you cover so much in this, Darcy, that when you get and you look at these reports now that are coming out from AARO and how that they're saying they didn't put in the report NHI, they said no alien life, which to me I think that's just them covering their rear ends down the line, but that's my personal opinion. For you, when you're hearing this, are you confident enough to say, Darcy, that this isn't, from what your research, that this isn't foreign craft, this isn't anything but, whether it is NHI or something else too, this is how confident you are from the research that you've been doing on these documentaries?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that it's not of a foreign arsenal. I remember when like skeptics were scrutinizing the Mosul orb and such recently in the past couple months. I think it was Mick West or somebody put forward that, oh, it's just this Chinese drone. Look, they have this new sphere that they've been building, and it's metallic and it's got cameras on all ends and it can fly around. Look. But the problem with that is that orb, if you look into the specifications for it, it flies for about 20 minutes indoors, not over the ocean in the middle of nowhere for miles and miles and miles, which is where the Go Fast object was flying that Tim Gallaudet witnessed, right? So there's just these comparisons that are constantly made by the skeptics and debunkers that do not match up with the flight capabilities of these things that are being witnessed by credible witnesses that are from the Navy, from the Air Force, all of our security, intelligence, and defense agencies. And in this documentary, I did cover the DHS, Department of Homeland Security videos that came out. Originally, those were leaked by my friend Andy Marciel, who has just a small following on Instagram, NYUAP discussion. A DHS agent became interested in him because he saw him as somebody that was credible, that seemed, very intelligent, could scrutinize things. Andy went about the right way of releasing those and had them scientifically analyzed by the SCU, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. and this is like panel of very intelligent men that are and women who are skeptical about most UAP or UFO videos. And because there was so much data in these DHS videos, like so many minutes of footage, and a heads up display from the FLIR cameras,
Yeah.
from these DHS airplanes that were recording them, they had so much information in order to properly scrutinize them. And lo and behold, months after, many, many months, at the end of last year, CBP, Customs Border and Patrol, actually released statements and documents on the UAP videos verifying that they were real. So I think there's something here that's probably non-human,
Yeah.
that's operating this stuff, whether that's like an artificial intelligence from somewhere else, or ET, or extra dimensional. You hear David Grush talking about these things, or something that's just lived in a domain like the oceans, which is vast. 70% of the planet that we do not have command and control of. We operate there, but if these things are that sophisticated and they're able to operate with sophistication there, maybe that's their domain. I don't know.
Well, and I guess, Tim, I want to ask you the same thing, and I don't know how much you're able to talk about it and within classifications and things of that nature, but when it comes to a similar question, do you have a certain theory? Do you have a certain confidence of what you think is going on down there, conversations that you might have, and one of the reasons that once you did retire that you wanted to come out and start speaking about it?
Oh, I'm totally convinced that we're experiencing a non-human higher intelligence. By the way, there's non-human intelligence all around in the ocean, especially when you look at marine mammals like whales and all that. But this is non-human higher intelligence, and they, of course, are possessing craft, vehicles, whatever that can do things we can't explain, and with technology we can't explain, and with laws of physics that are not what we know them to be, obviously. So, and I am completely convinced because I know the people who were in the government programs, the legacy programs that oversaw both the crash retrieval and just the analysis of UAP data. So I'm very confident in these people, former intelligence, former DoD, and we are working as a team behind the scenes to advance disclosure, a controlled disclosure, mind you, as was put forth in the Schumer Amendment.
Well, let me ask you that then, for what you just said, because as all this report comes from AARO this past week, or I guess by the time this airs, about a week and a half ago, this is something that I think is very old school of things, the way that it was done in the 50s and the 60s, and trying to do the Blue Book type of actions. It seems that way. But when you say you want to do disclosure in the right way, is there this fear now? Because you see, as soon as that report came out, the community in general and people that are pushing for disclosure are like, okay, well, it's coming the hard way now, and all this. And that seems to be, right now, for me, on the outside, seems like an empty threat, to be honest. But I ask you a two-part question here, Tim, if you will. The first part is, do you think that this report by AARO risks a big leak in something that could be catastrophic disclosure? And I guess the second part of that is, why are there not other countries then? Why is the United States so like the front of this all? Why are the other countries at this point go, who cares what the U.S. is doing? Yeah, they're covering up since the 40s. Here's what we got.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kristian. There's a couple things going on here. First off, this latest AARO report, which basically denied any existence of evidence of alien sources or operators of UAP and any possession of crash material, et cetera. What is going on with that report? And this is common in every other area of classified information in the Pentagon. They have decided that information should remain classified and unacknowledged. So the unclassified story is there's nothing there. And I know that to be a fact because several of my former colleagues, retired Navy admirals in the intelligence community, they've commented on this publicly saying, this is great. We endorse and support this report. And I of course, have a different opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to criticize the folks at AARO. They're intelligent professionals. They are working. I communicated with one of them today, and they are working to better understand what UAP are, because we still have a lot of uncertainty and questions. And frankly, the government still doesn't know what they are, where they come from, what their intentions are. But we do possess material and more data that the government does not want to disclose. And they're doing it, I surmise, because of national security reasons. They don't want our adversaries, China mainly, to know that we have these materials and that we might be trying to gain a technology advantage over them. That's just their policy decision. I of course think we should have a different approach where we look deliberately, as was outlined in the Schumer Amendment, to say, okay, we're going to maybe not release some of the most advanced information that could be a risk in terms of giving an adversary a technology edge. But then we should release to the public just the awareness that we are being visited. That's important, because there's so many national security and public safety concerns about this, knowing this fact, that we should have an informed public to develop this public policy that's totally absent and necessary. About our allies who are basically following our lead more or less, but not entirely. France put out their Cometa report, and I think others, like one of the Canadian senior officials last week, your country, I think, spoke out about, I think, a need for disclosure. And so there's more. We should be showing leadership in the U.S. and right now, I don't want to say we're not. With disclosure, we are not showing leadership because we made the policy decision not to do it. I think it's unfortunate, and it's going to be a setback. And as you said, Kristian, this could very well lead to a pretty dramatic disclosure event with the whistleblower protections that exist, and in a way that is going to be out of control for the DoD. And I thought they should have been a lot smarter in how they approach that report.
I couldn't agree more. All right, I hope you're all enjoying the interview with both Darcy and Tim Gallaudet. Like I told you, the information, I just wanted to listen to them talk, and really, like, the stuff that Tim Gallaudet was telling me was just anyway. So before we get going, I got to tell you guys real quick, I wanted to thank you for joining us each and every week on this show. It helps out tremendously when you are obviously leaving comments and putting likes, but it really helps if you have the means to. People ask now, I really like what you're doing. How can I support the show? And I say, well, support yourself too and get one of our wonderful sponsors. And I'll tell you about two of those right now, and that's both Vessi Footwear and Factor. Here you go. Vessi. So, John, I got these new shoes, and they have it's like rain wear. It's really, it's incredible. They sent it to me a while ago, but I'm so excited to tell them about them. For us, I want to tell you that Vessi has this innovative, it's like footwear, and it's designed for spring weather. It's great. So Stormburst Vessis are the ones that I really want to kind of emphasize, and they're your go-to for every setting, city streets to outdoor adventures, enhancing your style and activity with ease. So you can, whether it's snowy trails, wet streets, morning dew walk. So whether you're facing unexpected snow or slippery paths, it's so crucial in general to have these. I'm planning a move. I've talked about this, but it's been raining a lot in LA, and I've been wearing my Vesties everywhere. And you guys seen it. I've been wearing the one hoodie that I had that they sent me. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. I love these hoodies. I've worn it on in so many different videos. They have all-weather, all-occasion footwear from beach days to snowy commutes. They have so many different things. You should elevate your spring wardrobe when you travel with Vessi's Stormburst shoes. You can discover more at vessi.com/bigthing. Get your pair today and get an automatic 15% off your first purchase at checkout, and be ready to step out into style. It is great stuff. I love Vessi. Really enjoy Vessi. Excited to talk to you guys about Factor, man. It's not always easy to eat better, but it is with Factor, because they have delicious, ready-to-eat meals. It's every one of them. It's fresh. It's never frozen. It is chef-crafted. It's dietitian approved, and it's ready to go. This is the best part. 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from each week, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, all of it. And there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day. What are you waiting for? 2-minute meals, and there's a lot of great stuff. Pancakes, smoothies. There's no prep, there's no mess meals, it's flexible for your schedule. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. You just sign up and you save. You head to factormeals.com/bigthing50, but you got to use that code, bigthing50. And what happens when you use bigthing50? You get 50% off. That's bigthing50 at factormeals.com/bigthing50, and you get 50% off. All right. Once again, thank you to our sponsors over at Vessi Footwear and Factor. Mentioned before, if you're able to, you have the means to, please check them out. I always put the link in the description. I always pin them to the top comment. So do that. Now let's get back to the interview.
Darcy, when it comes to all this information that you were the amount of the one thing I found really fascinating was when you were talking to, and I say this lovingly because I thought the guy and I forgot his name, but you were talking about the submarines and how much of the Earth, the oceans can actually be explored. And the guy and the gentleman that you were talking to who had so much information on the submarines, he looked like Ric Flair. To me, and I loved him.
Oh, you're talking about Jim Goodall.
Yes, yeah. He looked like Ric Flair, and I loved him for it.
Great friend, yeah, good guy.
Great. What just a vast amount of information coming from him, and it blows your mind when he says, when you asked him, you're like, well, how much have we discovered in the ocean? He's like, how much? He's like 5%. And when you think about everything that's going on down there now, with the information of how much potential craft has been recovered by various countries, United States, Russia, yada, yada. The ocean's a different thing. The ocean's a different thing because it's moving. And when you when you put in that there was a craft that was seen, what was it? You said it's something like 1,000 miles an hour or something crazy to where it's like how fast it was going. They couldn't even track it. It was going so fast. What about where does this come to play, Darcy? What do you think when it comes to information that could come out from whistleblowers about the ocean stuff? About what kind of, there's footage of things flying in the sky. What kind of footage, what kind of things do we have that could potentially in the future help prove what's going on in the oceans as well?
Yeah, so a couple things there to unpack. I think the Navy is very aware of the UAP issue for the fact that if you look historically at who the military powers of the world originally were, it was always the navies, right? The navies were trying to conquer the oceans. That was the first frontier for mankind before we went to space, right? We're talking about 1600s, 1800s. We didn't have planes yet. There was no Air Force. It was just Navy ships. So we do have lots of logs of strange things happening over the oceans that were, you could consider in a modern eye now as like UAP or UFO sightings. And we do talk about that a bit at the end of the documentary. Mm-hmm. But I think the American Navy, it's the same thing. They were the most established world military power first, right? In the modern age. With all of their arsenal, their aircraft carriers, their submarines, they're the state of the art compared to China, Russia, and the UK, whatever. And there have been many, many reports of aircraft carriers being swarmed by UAPs. Yeah. Jeremy Corbell brought up that, released that video with these triangular objects. They apparently even deployed anti-drone technology at them, and there was no effect from the aircraft carrier. Like these types of things are happening all the time. The Navy's not releasing that information willingly.
Right.
It's coming out through leaks, through folks who witness it on the ship that go, hey, Jeremy Corbell seems like a nice guy, and he seems credible and knows what he's talking about. I'm going to send this UAP video to him. And that was what happened with the DHS videos with my friend Andy Marciel. So I think there is a mountain of evidence, as former Gang of Eight Republican senators said. What's his name again, Tim?
You're not talking about Harry Reid.
Harry Reid. My bad. Sorry. I got that messed up.
Democrat from Nevada.
Democrat.
Yeah.
My bad. He says there's a mountain of evidence that the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies are sitting on regarding UAPs. And I totally believe that. I think that the Navy knows about all kinds of ocean-based data. And I think guys like David Grush, who led up the UAP task force and interviewed 40 different credible whistleblowers. You know, they're not whistleblowers yet. I think David knows about the ocean-based phenomenon, and as does Lou Elizondo. He's alluded to a presence there. So, yeah, look out for that. I think there probably will be more testimony coming forward that the DoD can't control, and it's too bad that they didn't get ahead of it by being on the right side of history with the AARO report.
And I can only imagine, like, the roller coaster ride that you guys are on, and Tim, especially yourself, and how, you know, you've been so locked into this thing. For me, I'm really been paying attention. I did an old show that when the New York Times article dropped, we covered it, and I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. And that was like the first thing to me that the mainstream media really covered. And I think that they are doing a complete disservice to this whole entire thing, whether they believe it or not. I think it's even what's strangely enough, I thought that the fact that the AARO invited all this legacy media, that there was going to be the reports on the Fox News and CNN, and they covered it online, which again, that's still reaching an audience, but it wasn't reaching the same audience that I feel is being neglected from all the stories. Like, nobody covered the Cell Foundation on the big networks, by the way, which was crazy, what you guys were doing, and nobody covered that. And I think it's a disservice, and I think that they might have even it backfired on them last week, because the people they're trying to reach and saying like, oh, see, nothing's there, they didn't even know this stuff was going on. The people that did reach is guys like me, and I'm going, you're full of shit. So I would ask you again, Tim, where the roller coaster itself, it's like I get bummed. I get bummed when I see things like this, because I feel like, and it's George Knapp said the quote that I quote all the time, which is, they are better at their jobs than we are at ours. In your heart of hearts, I know what you guys are fighting for, and I know that the mission you guys are fighting for, and obviously I'm doing this show and I commend you guys for it, and I want to talk to all of you guys about it. But in your heart of hearts, what is it going to take, and do you believe it's going to happen in our lifetime that we're going to get the information out to the public?
It's going to come out in our lifetime, Kristian, but let me back up a little bit. First off, the Soul Foundation, I encourage all your listeners to go to the website. And just yesterday, March 18th, an article of mine, a scholarly researched article on USOs was posted. And if people care about this topic, look at that. And what I do is I look at a long, broad view of the transmedium and undersea UAP phenomena. And I treat it from the national security standpoint as well as the scientific standpoint. And I make a case that these USOs should be a national ocean science research priority for the U.S. and really internationally, writ large. But stepping back, I'm confident that the Congress is going to at some point reattack the Schumer Amendment and basically redirect the DoD's approach. That's what's happened. And you have to, I think Christopher Mellon, wrote a really excellent article, and he presented it at the Soul Foundation, where he looked at about what would UAP disclosure look like, and would it be good? And he ultimately concluded that despite the many challenges, it could be good. It could bring about international cooperation and certainly a new scientific revolution. And so I think he really characterized that whole thing well. And when you look at and read that, you realize it's a matter of time now. That genie's out of the bottle. And now in Congress, we've had a hearing, a historic hearing last year. And so it's just going to take a little more time legislatively, and that will provide the direction to get the DoD to release more of what it knows.
Fingers crossed for that one. I'm hoping, and as I hear that there are these kind of two fights going on within the DoD and AARO to kind of maybe suppress a little bit. I know you said there's some people in AARO that seem to actually be trying to find out some information as well, but from the perception of where I'm sitting, it seems like they're in cahoots at the moment with the DoD. But I hear what you're saying.
Well, let me explain that, Kristian, quickly. So AARO is part of DoD, and they have to follow DoD policy, which really has to follow the executive branch or White House policy. That's how it goes. Mm-hmm. And so I believe I know how this works because I was a senior official in the Department of Commerce. and a political appointed official, and those people at the National Security Council, they take their orders from the president. The president does not want this to be disclosed because it would just be a huge speed bump for the 2024 election.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've made it very clear. This is how the policy and authorities flow in the U.S., that the White House and then the departments, Department of Defense, and AARO is just one office in the DOD, and they're following the SecDef and National Security Council's lead on policy. And that's the way it works. You never get out of the lane or you lose your job.
Right. Yeah, no, it makes total sense, especially with the election coming up. And I'm just curious if that means that the hearings, the second hearings that are supposed to happen, if that gets pushed until after the election because of exactly what you just said. Darcy, you know, when it comes to the stuff that you learned here about the USOs, what really did you you have your mind open, because you were curious about it? Obviously, that's why you did the doc. But like, what did you learn that you were just like, wow? And never in a million years, I knew there was some stuff going down under the ocean, but never in a million years did I think that was happening. Was there a lot of those moments for you?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking with Tim, was a bit starstruck, to be honest, sitting in front of him. But when he was mentioning, when I was talking about where could this data regarding our oceans and the Navy's cataloging of UAPs, USOs in and around our oceans, where would that be kept? And he had said it's most likely like a third-party agency that
Right.
he's got his finger on the pulse at this point. He's pretty sure he knows their client is the DoD and other intelligence agencies, and they're probably keeping that information. And, you know, it's the same sort of setup as the National Geospatial Agency, which is where David Grush came from. He was working on behalf of all their partners and, you know, getting intelligence data for let's say, the NSA. Or the NRO, like that, these guys all work together. And I think that the interesting thing about that situation is that those third parties are not subjected to the Freedom of Information Act requests that our civilians, journalists, and such can submit to a government agency. So that's the kind of loophole, so that they don't have to release that data because it's actually private. But to your other point, you were asking Tim before, what's it going to take for this subject to finally just get out and be blown up in the masses and taken seriously? I think it really is just going to take irrefutable evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, like, to people that have sound logic and, you know, a skeptical mind still, but understand all of the moving parts and intricacies of catching the footage from the Tic Tac incident, that is irrefutable evidence to us that there's some kind of, you know, super advanced technology interacting with our F-18 fighter pilots that makes them look like a joke, right? But and what is that? That has to be something either, and I don't even think we have something super classified that can operate like that. But you're going to need a whistleblower to come forward that provides some kind of evidence that says, here, this is the non-human intelligence. One of them, maybe, this is their craft. Here's evidence of their body, like, you know, their physical body, whatever. I think something like that needs to be dropped in order, and that might be a leak, but it ends up getting scrutinized by the government, like by this bipartisan government group that's actually interested in this right now. You got Matt Gaetz, you got Tim Burchett,
Moskowitz.
Yeah, Moskowitz, Rubio. They're all. That was a lot of Republicans. I think they're
AOC. AOC's asking questions. I mean, they got everybody out there right now. Yeah.
So it is a bipartisan issue. I think it's an existential issue for mankind, right? So it should be on everybody's radar, so to speak.
Yeah. And so I guess to couple off that, something that Darcy just mentioned there, Tim, was that it was a story that you were telling, and I don't know when you guys shot this and if anything's changed since, but inside the documentary, you were talking about a story that you heard about a sub that was on, that everyone was kind of tracking on the bridge in sonar. And then you said that it's, Darcy just mentioned that the data was sent somewhere and that you were digging into it. Are you able to yet talk about that stuff, about where it goes, particularly the acoustic data, I think that you said? Can you speak about that yet or not yet?
Yeah, I can say at least that I know where it is. It's Johns Hopkins University. It's acknowledged that they are a repository for Navy acoustic data, but that data is classified, and it will be a chore to get my eyes on that, even though I am getting my clearance reinstated. So we'll see if that helps. But ultimately, AARO is taking a peek at that for us. So they do want to work, and I don't want to totally disparage the good intelligence analysts in that office. Again, they are beholden to the administration policy right now, and that report, which I think was a disservice to them because it did not make them look good.
No, but also yes,
data's out there, acoustic data. Also, there's unclassified acoustic data where you might be able to find evidence of undersea UAP or USOs. And that's my campaign right now because of my background with a PhD in oceanography and a network of all these ocean experts that I'm close to. Is I want to mount a national ocean research effort in the U.S. to not just look at our oceans more broadly, open the aperture and include UAP as a topic for study.
All right, guys, again, thank you for listening to the interview, and I hope you're enjoying it. As I said before, I wanted to thank our sponsors and have to thank again both ZBiotics and Robinhood, and I'll tell you a little bit about them right now. I'll tell you about Robinhood. This is a new one. So did you guys know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, that you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe on Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. And that's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claims as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial is a registered broker-dealer. The other thing you want to check out is ZBiotics. And ZBiotics, thank God I went to a wedding last night, and ZBiotics is the reason that I am able to be here with you today. They are the maker of the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. You got to take your first drink of the night for a better tomorrow. Fact. It's engineered by a team of microbiologists, and ZBiotics is a probiotic drink that breaks down the byproduct of alcohol, which is responsible for rough mornings after drinking. So you have a ZBiotic for the best results. You take your first drink of the night before you do anything else. You pace yourself, you hydrate, and you get a good night's sleep. And then you wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. I love it. It is game changer. I'm not young enough to be able to just do what I did when I was younger. Don't do it anymore. I take ZBiotic. I'm feeling good today. And every time I have a ZBiotic before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even a night out, I can confidently plan on it, and doing shows, I'm moving. So I gave ZBiotics a try when they first came to the show. I drank it last night before this wedding, and I'm telling you, I'm top of my game right now. You wouldn't even be able to tell that I was drinking last night. So this year, I'm going to form a more sustainable and better me, podcasting, doing all this stuff. This is not a all or nothing approach. So you got to go to zbiotics.com/bigthing and use that code BIGTHING. You check out for 15% off. And thank you to ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode and for all the good times. All right. Again, thank you to our friends over at ZBiotics and Robinhood. Just as I said before, if you're able to, you have the means to, please support our show if you can and you want to, and you want to get something for yourself. The link's in the description. And I always put the sponsors in the top comment. Okay, let's get back to the interview.
Yeah, and when you mentioned, and I think as Darcy was talking about, with when it's most likely a lot of the stuff could potentially come from a leak or whatever it might be, is that what it also seems like, and David Grush had mentioned it quite often in the hearings, that there's only so much he could talk about because he didn't want to go to jail. There's only so much he could talk about, and it seems like that's what's holding back a lot of this particular information, right? Is that classified and what you can talk about, and the reason why. I believe that there's tons of footage. There's that. There was a report that just came out. I guess what Ross Coulthart just talked about. That he said that there was a report that I can't remember. And you guys correct me from what I get wrong here, but it was that there was a video shown to certain senators, I think, in the room, that they saw like a 20-minute video that was more like high def than anything that we had seen so far. And that's the kind of stuff that I think, as Darcy's talking about, that's the kind of stuff that's going to start to get people to go, what's that? And that's the kind of stuff that's going to go to the mainstream news shows, I should say, that people watch every day. My dad's going in, and after he's done with walking the dogs and sits down to watch news. That's the type of show. Finally, they're not going to be able to say, well, we got to show that. Otherwise, we're just going to look incompetent. But is it the classified stuff, though, that you believe that is kind of holding it back? And what do you believe, Tim, that it's going to take that the public's finally going to go, well, wait a minute. Okay, like let me phrase that better. I think that with all the whistleblowers that are supposed to, apparently there's 40 new people that are supposed to come in. Obviously you won't have to tell me yes. I mean, don't have to tell me who, but tell me the names. But do you know a lot of these potential people that are going to be coming forward, and could we see potential evidence like that come out?
Possibly, yes, Christian. And I know people who know them. How about that?
Okay.
And I do know this. There's a ton of data out there that's classified on UAP. It's not a one-off, and we have to really look hard for them. The data is all over the place.
Yeah.
These are happening. We see observations like Ryan Graves did off the East Coast of the U.S. in 2015. That's just the reality. Is we're collecting a lot of this data, and what I do think is going to have to happen is the Schumer Amendment. And you did a great job, by the way, when you went over Carl Nell's presentation, which laid out, and that was a lot of time and effort to come about what was in the Schumer Amendment and what would be included and why. It wasn't just a sort of by the way effort. They really deliberately assessed what is the right path ahead for disclosure, and they did a great job at it. And again, I really think that's the answer. We had some speed bumps with, of course, the representatives who resisted it, and we're just going to have to reattack that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The Schumer Amendment's contents are really what we need, and we just have to engage Congress to go back at it and reattack.
Yeah, Darcy, that's the same. I mean, and then when I had on Steve Bassett not too long ago, who said essentially the same thing. It's the Schumer Amendment. It's the Schumer Amendment. That's what's going to help. When you're talking to all the different personalities, like Tim and the gentleman that you spoke to in the doc, do you think that with the constant pressure and the mounting evidence that this is something that eventually we'll be able to break through the Schumer Amendment, that is? And I don't know. I'm curious on your opinion on it.
Absolutely. Look. We're at an unprecedented time in history right now where people are speaking out about UAPs, UFOs like never before. Like it is kind of going mainstream, right? And you have bipartisan congressional members meeting in these classified, skips and discussing it and getting read into it more than ever. I think everybody was crying bloody murder about the Schumer Amendment, about AARO, the AARO report, and that's fine. Like that's great instant feedback. We live in this age of information where people are going to get to the bottom of truth pretty quick. I think it's just a bump in the road because there's going to be other bills that get submitted, right? Like how many healthcare acts or bills have been submitted throughout the decades. and finally get something that's workable that both sides kind of like, maybe, I don't know, right? But this is just the landmark first one that kind of got destroyed, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there's going to be another one that comes up in the future that actually makes some more progress on this issue. I'm hopeful. And I've said before, and I'll say again, the only thing that I think would mess up the progress of this is if there's some kind of attack on the United States, and, kind of 9/11 style, where we have to worry about the security of the United States and their information more than ever.
Yeah.
That would lock down progress, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean that's would make sense overall to where you would see that the attention would go there first. Tim, if this hearing does indeed happen, and then they called upon yourself to say, "Hey, we want you to come across and testify about what you have talked about in Darcy's doc that you've been talking about it," so would you do that?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I've testified about 10 times on other topics, but I definitely would do it on this one. I think it's important. That's why I published articles on it. I have this Soul Foundation white paper that's been posted.
Yeah.
And yes, I absolutely will. Good. To Darcy's point about an attack on the U.S. and that sort of thwarting a disclosure process, I have a giant concern about that, because right now I have a high confidence China is either going to impose a naval blockade or outright attack Taiwan this year before the U.S. elections. That's not based on intelligence. I don't have a clearance. This is just based on me reading open source documents and news, and that is going to put a giant wrench in disclosure, because it's just not going to be a priority right now, sadly. But that's something to really worry about, and I'm watching it closely.
It's, I mean, again, you have to understand, for like the covering this for the last like 8 months, the amount of information. Because and I can't, like I said, I don't think you guys are as familiar with my show, but like what we've talked about many times on this thing is that when we started doing this show, I said to my friend Mark Riley, who normally co-hosts with me, I said, "Look, I'm very curious about this. Let's do it. I'm sure like there'll be information that comes out like, every couple months, and it's like every day, and the amount of stuff that's coming out is as crazy."
Well, look what's been out there already. James Lukatsky put out a book where he specifically states that we have a craft.
Yes.
These are the allegations and that we are hearing and talking about, and what Dave Grush testified to. And he's published. And then, of course, all your readers are familiar with books like Skinwalkers of the Pentagon and its sequel, which I've read too. And I know individuals in that book personally, and I can totally attest to their credibility.
All right. So wait. So you bring up Lukatsky now, because he was the one who said that they had breached the hull of the ship, and but when he was asked about the same question that I asked yourself about, he doesn't seem like he wants to testify. And then I know that Bob Lazar is a big is a big nobody. It's like this: when you bring up Bob Lazar, it's like there's the Bob Lazar. Everyone believes Bob Lazar. Everyone doesn't believe Bob Lazar in the same way that people, when you bring up Stephen Greer, it's the same thing. Why, if he publishes that report, why would he be so skeptical? Or not skeptical, rather hesitant to testify when this is that important? And maybe the same question, I don't know your opinion on Lazar, but that would be the same question, I guess, that would go for Lazar.
Well, I don't have an opinion on Bob Lazar. A lot of people do, though.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
As far as James Lukatsky, I don't know what his thoughts are, but I know that he's only been able to say what he said in this book, and he would probably, of course, because he was read into those programs, doesn't want to take a risk of saying more of what he's not allowed to say and violate an NDA and get himself in real trouble, which is a really smart thing to do, by the way. I myself, and the reason I'm probably the lone admiral here speaking out about this, is I never signed an NDA on topics like this. I never was read into the program. It was inadvertently that I saw the Go Fast video on the Navy Secret Network. So now, of course, I've signed NDAs on other topics that I just don't talk about now. And that's where, luckily, I'm in that position. And I couldn't guess what James's thinking is, but he's got to play it safe. It's smart for him to do, and he's got a book out there where he doesn't need to say more.
Have you been, since you've come forward have you been approached by former colleagues to say, "Hey, what are you doing? Shush! Don't say anything. Stop this." Has that happened? No.
I have not. Thankfully, I know that people have been harassed, and no, I've not been. No one's ever said that. In fact, I have a lot of colleagues that were junior to me, and they're really interested. The Gen Z folks want to know, and it's going to take that. I said this during the Soul Foundation talk, and I quoted Diana Pasolco's book, where she mentioned E.O. Whitley, how in her studies for aviation safety, it took about a generation for the culture to shift, for pilots to start reporting about safety concerns in the cockpit, and sort of just dislodge that sort of macho, I can't appear vulnerable attitude and culture. And I think it's going to be the same for UAP. And it's happening. Younger people, Gen Z, they want to know, and they're not going to put up with government bureaucracy to cover it up.
Well, Darcy, that's a great point also, because I think that when it comes, you had mentioned beforehand how you feel like this topic's getting more mainstream, because when you're talking about making a documentary film and someone says, "Oh yeah, what are you making a film about?" And you're like, 10 years ago, UFOs under the water. And now it's like, oh, really? What? Tell me more. Does it feel that way more so now than it did when you first started doing this?
Yeah, I think it does. When I first made I've released like 15 feature-length documentaries at this point.
Yeah.
And more than that, but over 15. But I originally released this, and it was a very niche crowd. Some people refer them to as like the woo crowd, that kind of equate UAP and USOs and UFOs to something etheric or spiritual.
Yeah.
And that never really has been my thing. I have a skeptical and more scientific mind when it comes to phenomenon like this. And I think this is physical. But I think now, since there's so many people that are exposed to it post 2017, I think we really do have to thank Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo's efforts in leaking that, Air Force footage. That has really blown this open and made this such a wide topic around the world at this point. And it's allowed it to be more accessible and scrutinized by everybody, right? Even Mick West can be thankful, because he's like a skeptic celebrity because of that stuff, right?
Right.
And we need people to be skeptical about this. But yeah, I think it's getting more and more important and interesting to the folks around the world who otherwise never would have even paid attention to it.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things, obviously I think every time now that this topic comes up, the name of David Grush is mentioned, and should be. I feel he's people say he's an American hero. I say he's a world hero, to be completely honest with you, for what he's done and what he continues to try to do. And now with the stuff that he had done with the Soul Foundation, and now, Tim, I don't know if you saw the report. The Ask a Poll had this report that David Grush would potentially be working with the UAP caucus inside of Washington going back. Do you feel that this is something, A, that will happen, and B, should happen?
Absolutely. This is our path. I mean, we got the Schumer Amendment foiled. What better way than to have an insider working on the staff there on the Hill to get it over the goal line? I think it's terrific.
Same question, Darcy.
I think that's a fantastic breakthrough. Again, like I said, you've got things falling apart with AARO and the Schumer Amendment, but then you hear about this opportunity for Grush, and he gets to actually be part of the, congressional process on scrutinizing this and getting it introduced to more people. That's probably exactly why he stepped a little bit away from the Soul Foundation.
Yeah.
Although I think the Soul Foundation is like a fantastic platform for some vetted and credible science on this subject and a true history of the phenomenon. I think he just had to focus his energies on that, because he could make a bigger difference in that capacity.
Yeah, well, that's what, as Tim was saying, kind of like boots on the ground. But speaking of the Soul Foundation, Tim, what do you see next for Soul Foundation as far as what as you said, you just published something, and recently there's more that's coming out. What's the overall goal for, besides obviously the awareness and disclosure, but what is the next plan for Soul Foundation moving forward?
Well, first off, keep in mind what the Soul Foundation's purpose is and function. They are seeking to advance UAP research, understanding, education, and public policy. And so with that in mind, those are the lines of effort we're pursuing. My white paper that I just posted on the undersea phenomena, basically, what I'm seeking to do because of my position on the advisory board of Soul is to elevate undersea UAP in America's ocean research agenda and priorities. And because I know the people involved at the agencies that do that, the Office of Naval Intelligence, NOAA, my old agency, the Naval Oceanographic Office, those who could contribute to it, as well as all the civilian ocean research institutions. And the pitch I'm making, and this is as an advisory board member for Soul Foundation, is why wouldn't our ocean science community want to have this sort of national effort? Because the spinoff is a lot more ocean science. And then maybe we'll also learn about undersea UAP or USOs too. So if we can get some more investment in ocean science, that's a great thing. What we kind of glossed over in this meeting really quick, Kristian, is that, we've only explored about 5% of the ocean's volume, and not even 25% of the seabed do we even know and has been mapped. So there's a lot of ocean out there that we don't know. And it's why wouldn't it potentially to be that these few sightings we've seen, or several hundred actually, undersea be the tip of the iceberg of something more?
Well, that's a fantastic point. I'm glad you brought that back up, because the fact that, putting my tinfoil hat on, if you will, the fact that whatever these things could be, and knowing, look at the technology that we know that whatever it is has in the sky, and whatever the technology, clearly from the documentary that you guys are putting together, and all the information about what the different subs are seeing and what these things are capable of, who's to say that they can explore 100% of the ocean, and that they know if I have that type of capability, and they don't know what they can't find us here. We'll go here. Let's go at this speed and go over here. So it's like there's so much, because the entire world is essentially water, and these things know how to navigate it. So
It's don't know, but there's certainly a whole ocean of possibilities, if you will.
That's absolutely right. Guys, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here today. Again, the documentary is the Fast Movers and USOs, Exploring the Depths of the Unknown, a documentary journey into transmedium UFOs and USOs. Darcy Weir, Tim Gallaudet. Darcy, where can they find the doc?
Yeah, so right now it's streamable on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and Google Play, Vudu, bunch of other platforms. So I really appreciate the support and you having me on as an independent filmmaker. This is my 9 to 5, and just trying to focus on interesting stories like this. People can check me out on my socials like Twitter, Occult Journeys, at Occult Journeys, which is my studio, Instagram, Darcy Weir Films, and really appreciate it. If anybody wants to help me out on IMDb, I got brigaded and attacked over the last few years. Don't know why, but definitely I get a lot of heat for some reason whenever I'm releasing these. And if you go to IMDb, check out my film pages there and give me a weighted review and star rating, because somebody's gone through there and just smashed me with 1 stars out of 10.
Well, it deserves way more than that. I'll tell you that. It's a lot of great information. Tim Gallaudet, so where, if people want to go and check out your report that you said you just published on Soul, where could they find that? And where's there some other stuff that they should be looking at?
Oh, just go to the Soul Foundation website and you should be able to find it. And I think that's enough for me. This is not my 9 to 5 job. This is absolutely kind of just something I'm pursuing because I think it's important. But I'm not making this a full-time endeavor quite yet.
Well, once again, it's a pleasure to have both you guys here. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and good luck to you both.
Yeah, see, I'm telling you, man. there was so much in there, and I was so grateful to both Darcy and Tim Gallaudet coming on the show, and just to hear how Darcy got involved with it in the first place, and then just the amount of stuff that Tim was telling me kind of just blew my mind. The stuff he was saying in general about how he first took wind of it, and the stuff he was talking about with Soul Foundation, and then his answer for when I asked him about how the Schumer portion of the act and how crucial that was, and his honesty about it. It's like, it was a big setback, but they're still pushing forward. So what about you guys? What'd you think overall? What'd you think of the interview? What'd you think about what both of them said? And how much did you guys know about USOs? Because I'm still learning about all this stuff and how important this is to the phenomenon overall. And I'm very curious as you put comments in there, because I want to know, and I see this all the time on the comments section. How long have you been following this? Because I see some people coming in and be like, I've been following this for, I'm 68 years old. I've been following it forever. I'm 23. I just learned about this stuff. I put your comments in there, because I want to see overall. This is what I say for the audience who watches this show, is that everybody, whether you've been following it forever, you start following it 5 minutes ago, start having the conversation and start asking those questions, because that's what's important. And if you're brand new to the channel, you've never been here before, the other thing that's important that helps me out, and it also helps you get more information as we do it, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers faster than we got to 100, but we need you guys. You guys are the voices. You guys have been growing this channel, and we need you to hit that button. And if you want daily news of the UAP stuff, head on over to Down to Earth with Kristian Harloff. That's my daily UAP news channel. That is going well right now. We just started it about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We're pushing close to 15,000 over there, but either way, love to have you on board here. Love to have you on board over there. Apple Podcast, Spotify. If you're looking for this show on podcast form, that's on the Down to Earth podcast feed on Spotify or Apple. So that's all in the links in the description as well. All right. Thanks for joining us here today on the show. We appreciate you. Thank you to Darcy and Tim for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.